Galatians has been really drawing a lot of response. People are loving this journey back into the grace and covenant and the fulfilled law and all the, I kind of think of them as ABCs of the Gospels, like we're in a new covenant and Jesus did the work and God loves you and he's not asking for anything from you. These are simple, they seem like ABCs, but they're not really. I mean, they're not even familiar to some people. You know, they're not, it's like we've heard the gospel, which is come to Jesus so you don't go to hell. And then when you hear anything else, you hear anything about grace or the new covenant or the finished work, it's like hearing a new language. It's like hearing something that and in fact, it's like hearing such a new language, to some people it's heretical. It's heretical that you're not talking about hell, that you're not always preaching to people about what they do, and that and that you mention the love of God to people who don't even go to church. How dare you to give, and I mean, that's some of the issues that you run into. You try to give people the love of God. Galatians just throws it all out there on the table and goes, here's what God has done in Christ. Paul's controversial. Paul's a bit argumentative. Paul's headstrong. It's beautiful. It's got every facet of what makes Paul awesome and what sometimes makes Paul insecure and what can borderline make Paul a jerk from time to time. But that's okay. It's like the full man. He brings everything he is to this letter. And I think it's a spectacular snapshot of the very, very young church. They're less than a generation old, fresh off the heels of Pentecost. They are a group of people who come from as diverse of backgrounds as we see in the world today. It was that early church is rapidly becoming something new every day. It's something new tomorrow than it was today. And then it'll be something new the next day. Because it's bringing in new people. It starts as decidedly Jewish. And it doesn't take long at all before it's not decidedly Jewish. And then it's got elements of Judaism, but it's got all these new questions and new things to talk about and new issues and new problems. And maybe that snapshot of the church right before the fall of the temple, right in that sweet spot, is a really good microcosm of what the church has to deal with today, which is always new challenges and ideas and questions. And that's good for us. It's really good for us to be wrestling people and to try to get to the bottom of it. This is our 14th lesson, and I titled it Purpose of the Law. Real simple title, but not in any way a simple concept. And I want to start with that idea of how complex this is and how easy we try to make it sound. Okay, we're very guilty of trying to come up with compact, short, quick answers because we're in a digital world, we're in a social media world, we're in a yes and no, black and white. We hate gray. Especially in the church. You know, it's got to fall on this side or that side. There's no room for ambiguity. And the Bible doesn't play that game with you very often, and Paul doesn't play that game at all. So if I were to say to the average person, and let's just confine it to sort of the grace circles, if I were to say in the average grace church, grace people, what's the purpose of the law? You'd get 3 or 4 different answers, but everybody would have one, and they'd be adamant about it. Like, here's what the law is about. And it's amazing that what we're going to look at tonight is that Paul asks this very question, what is the purpose of the law? And then instead of saying, this is the purpose of the law, he goes, this, 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 this. Oh, and it's not that, and it's not that. And they're all in like 5 verses. And so it's not that Paul doesn't know, it's that Paul knows it's way bigger than him. And it takes some humility to face questions like, what's the purpose of the law? And walk away going, that, maybe that, probably not that. I used to think that. And then you go, well, I'm more confused than when I started. Are you really? And I think that's how we ought to flip that. Are you really more confused than when we started? Because you start with you don't know anything. And now you know 7 or 8 things, which is way better than knowing nothing. And it's more valuable than knowing one thing and ignoring 7 others. So the law did a lot of stuff. But the purpose of the law is broad. It's not just one thing is why the law is on us. So rather than trying to land on the thing, we're going to cover what Paul covers and try to talk through them. Paul does land pretty hard on what it can't do. and what it was never supposed to do. And so maybe we don't have all the answers, and we won't. And we get away from this and we'll have 5 more questions. But at least we could start to eliminate some stuff and say, well, I don't think this is what the law was ever supposed to do, and I don't want to fall into the trap of trying to make it do this. So let's get started on what is a tough one tonight. Not a tough lesson to teach. It's a fun lesson. I love it. I had a blast putting it together. It's tough because there's just too much stuff. And I know I can't get through it all, and I'm going to try, but I'm not going to try. Like, we're not going to do it. I'll just say it up front. I got a bunch of stuff to talk about, but we're going to do what we can do, and then we'll just keep going next week. Because we could do this spot right here for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. We could talk about the law and what's going on and what does it mean for us. So we got to make some choices. So this is my disclaimer. If it just didn't go as deep as you want it, you know, come back another week. It's like, watch again next week. I don't know. You can't squeeze it all in there, but I do want to stretch you a little bit. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of scripture. Some of it we're not even going to turn to. This will be one of those nights you might take a note, write it down. I want to look that up when I get home. I want to see what that says. I know what he said it said, but I want to see what it says. That's a good way to treat the Bible. Some points, you might write them down, go back through them, rewind, go back earlier in the video and the audio, check these out. Work this on your own, okay? There's a lot here. We'll do what we can. Let's start with one verse. Galatians chapter 3, verse 19. We were at 18 last week. This is right in our progression. What purpose then does the law serve? Well, there's the question. That's literally our title, the purpose of the law. Paul asks the simple question, what purpose does the law serve? And then I'll give you an answer. You can tell, it can't be all of them. This is 19, and this whole segment takes us up into in the middle of the 20s. So a lot's going on. Here's the first part. It was added because of transgressions. And then Paul gets a little sidetracked till the seed should come to whom the promise was made. And then he gets really sidetracked and he gets really Jewish here. And it was appointed through angels by the hand of the mediator. So we got some work to do. If we didn't do anything else tonight, we could have a lot of fun in one verse. So here's what I want to try to lay out as a guide map for the next 2 weeks, all right? What purpose does the law serve? I'm going to put 5 up because we're going to work our way through 24. So 5 points that are covered to one extent or the other in verses 19 to 24. And here they are in real Cliff's Notes version. We're going to break down a few of these a little deeper tonight. Number 1, the law was added because of transgressions. That's verse 19. So I'll save the bulk of each argument for its own, but just a smatter statement up top. Paul presents the law as having been brought into effect because someone was transgressing. Okay. That's going to open up a can of worms. And Paul's the one who brought the can of worms to the party. And he does it in the book of Romans. We'll go there with him in a moment. But I want you to think of it, because that's a big one. That the law is added because of transgressions, plural. That people are missing the mark. They're habitually doing the wrong thing, by whatever definition that is. And so God adds law. So out of the gate, law, an attempt to curb whatever the transgression is. And a lot of us don't go any farther than that. That's what I meant by when I go, what's the purpose of the law? People go, well, a lot of people in the church would say to get people to live right, which is a fancy way of saying number 1. It's added because people are living wrong. And God, and if we stop there, here's what we end up with. God hates it when people live wrong. And what God really wants is people to live right. So God gave the law so people won't live wrong. Okay, and if that's your answer, that informs your whole Christianity. And then that informs how you view Christianity. And then it informs how you view people. Because then they become people of action. How are they living? What are they doing? Are they right or are they wrong? There's a solid right and there's a solid wrong. There's no middle ground. Everything's right and wrong, left and right, black and white. Okay. Because if that's why the law was added. But of course it's not the only thing. Number 2, Paul says in verse 21 that the law is powerless to make anyone righteous. I just trimmed that down to right, which is an interesting dichotomy. Number 1, it's added because people aren't living right. Number 2, it can't make anybody live right. I love how Paul loves to throw different pitches back to back. I'm gonna give you one thing to think about when you think you got that nailed. If you'll just keep reading along, you're gonna find there's a problem with my argument. I'm gonna undercut it right out of the gate. And so then we're gonna have to work with Paul to figure out what he possibly means. Thirdly, and these all roll together. If you make it to verse 22, you're going to find that the law confines everybody under sin. Okay, so it's added because people aren't doing right. By the way, it can't make anybody do right. And the very fact that it exists means everybody's doing wrong. That's just, Paul's just working his way through the progression of the law. Number 4, he covers in verse 23 that the law actually serves as a tutor or a guardian, meaning that it is not relational, familial, which is a very Jewish concept, that family, we are the people of God, we are the family of God, and Paul puts a chop right into the law by going, it's just a tutor, it's just a guardian, which means it's not a dad, it's not a brother, it's not a spouse, it's not blood, and this is big. Because this drives a wedge between whatever the law is and what you claim to be in Christ. Because it's just the best it could do was guard you, tutor you. It never parented you, which leads to number 5. It's meant to take us to Christ. And I had that all by itself on this screen. And then realized that in modern terminology, that means get saved. If I say take you to Christ. And the law is never meant to get you saved. So I added to this little statement, it's not meant to take you to Christ in an evangelistic sense. It's meant to take us to Christ as a guide. And then I stopped, and that was all I had. And I thought, well, that's a whole lot like the previous one, but it's not really what Paul's saying at all. So here's Paul White trying to compliment the Apostle Paul. The babysitter works until the parent gets home. All right? But the babysitter isn't dad. Okay, so the law is a tutor until Christ, not to get you to Christ. The babysitter watches you till dad gets home. He's not bringing you to dad. Okay, crude illustration, I don't know, best I got, but it works. Like, I watch you until he can watch you. Okay, so the impersonal tutor will take care of it until the personal father can take care of it. And don't be surprised that when Paul flips into chapter 4, he calls you sons. He takes it straight into familial talk. He has to, because he's driving a real cold wedge between what the performance of the law is and what the warmth of the love of the Father is. His natural progression into chapter 4 is going to be, we are sons. And when we weren't sons, then we had this. Okay, that'll lead us to next week. I don't think we'll get much into 4. We won't get it all into 5. But by next week we will, and we're going to do a comparison between whatever the tutor can do with whatever the Spirit can do. Okay, so very necessary, not to balance it, but a necessary comparison lesson. Okay, I'm going to lead into that with this work today. Let's go back to the top at 3:19 and let's add verse 20 to it. What purpose then does the law serve? It was added because of transgressions till the seed should come, to whom the promise was made, and it was appointed through angels by the hand of a mediator. Now a mediator does not mediate for one only, but God is one. Okay, we'll stay right here for a moment. We've already laid out that first one as a reason for the law, which is because of transgression. We're going to work on that in just a second. I want you to notice a couple of things, though, that I don't want to miss. We don't want to spend as much time on them because we can only spend so much time. Till the seed, New King James, capital S. The capitals are going to cause us some problems tonight. We're going to get into one in a minute that the New King James capitalizes, it probably shouldn't have. That's going to happen because it's people just making it up going, I think that's God. And then they throw a capital letter on it because they're not in the Greek. It's okay. I'm not mad at it. So you just got to do your own, you got to look at it, okay? But it works here because in the previous verses, we covered this in the last couple of weeks, the promises were made to seed, not seeds. If the promises were made to seeds, then they're made to natural Israel. If they're made to seed, then Paul calls them made to one person. And they're real path-breaking stuff because Paul's taken all the promises out of a nation, he's sticking it into a person. And I don't think Paul had room for that to then someday leak back out into a people. It's all in a seed. So it's still in Jesus. And so he just stays on that theme. It's Paul progressing his argument. So you had to have the previous lessons to really know what seed would be all about. And so the seed here is Christ. The law serves this purpose, that it was added because of transgressions till the seed should come. Don't miss that. It was added because of transgressions till the seed should come. Not through the seed coming, but up until the seed. So but right from the very beginning of his argument, he gives you a hint. What purpose does the law serve? I'll give you a hint as to how long it would serve it before we answer it, he goes. It would serve it till the seed got there. And till the seed got there, people were messing up, and we got to deal with their mess ups. And so because of the transgression, till the seed gets there, to whom the promise was made, that's the Abrahamic promise. Here's the weeds. We're going to deal with these weeds in a minute. It was appointed through angels by the hand of a mediator. A mediator doesn't mediate for one only, but God is one. So who's the mediation for then? It's not for God. This is Paul's point. Mediators don't mediate for one person. Mediators mediate on behalf of parties, plural. Well, we're the party. We're the people. We're the plural. God's not plural. God doesn't need a mediator. We need a mediator, but we need the mediator to mediate on our behalf. And so that's going to set us up for the understanding of covenant, of Jesus being our mediator. So let's go with a very old Jewish idea. This phrase in the middle of our screen, right before the end of 19, that it's appointed by angels through the hand of a mediator. I wanted to deal with it. I contemplated skipping it, but if we're going to do Bible studies and you're going to come across something that, if you pay attention to it, is a little odd, when are you ever going to study that stuff if you're not going to study it in Bible studies? You know, it's unlikely you're going to hear a Sunday morning sermon on that which is mediated by angels. So when else are we going to cover it? What does it mean that it was mediated at the hands of angels? Well, I'm not sure. And I don't know that anybody is. What I will do is give you some Bible, and I'll give you some extra biblical literature, and then you can make your own assessment. What I would encourage you in is to not go too far with it. It's not worth anything that runs you away from the mediator that is Jesus, because for some reason we get really infatuated and fired up with stuff like angels and demons in the church. So anytime you do 5 minutes on angels and demons, people need 5 hours. And they lose their minds in excitement over the things that you can't say a lot about. And I don't even touch a lot of things that I can't do much with, because I know then people all they want to do is email you and go, do you have a sermon on that? It was 10 seconds of a message. Do you have a sermon on that? And you miss the mediator. So why does Paul throw it in at all? Well, because there is evidence scripturally of the Jewish idea that the law was mediated to Moses at the hand of an angel. And that could just be a way of saying that God showed up in angelic form and handed it to Moses. Okay, fine. But it also could be a way of showing the superiority of the Christocentric mediator, Jesus. That Jesus is no angel. He's a resurrected Son of God. That if he mediates, it's God mediating. He is God. God is him. Jesus is what God always looked like. Okay. So it could be a way of saying one is handed to you by a mediator. It may or may not be reflective entirely of God. The other is God. Okay, that's my argument that I think Paul's doing, is to say one is by angels, the other is by Jesus. But let me show you the text so that you know. Let's go to Stephen. Stephen is in his final throes. They're about to stone him to death. So he gets one sermon. It's an amazing sermon in Acts 7. Don't have time to read it all, but look at 2 passages from the Acts chapter 7, 38 and then 52, 53. Stephen says this. This is he who was in the congregation in the wilderness. Here's our problematic proper noun that the New King James should not have capitalized. In the wilderness with the angel who spoke to him on Mount Sinai, and with our fathers, the one who received the living oracles to us. I say should not. I don't think they should have. They capitalized it because they made the assumption that it's God that's talking. However, that is not congruent with what Stephen says right before he dies Same speaker, same chapter. Chapter 7, verse 52 and 53, which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute? They killed those who foretold the coming of the just one, of whom you now have become the betrayers and murderers, who have received the law by the direction of angels and have not kept it. Why did the New King James capitalize angels there? Because they could tell it was plural, and there ain't no plural God. That was their thinking. And someone should probably have went back and went, well, maybe Stephen didn't change who he was talking about. And so it was an angel in the first one, and it's angels in the second. And if we're going to establish everything with the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, then let's add a third, Hebrews 2:2. If the word spoken through angels proves steadfast, and every transgression and disobedience received a just reward. And I didn't go into the rest of it because I didn't want to get too deep into what Hebrews is saying other than the fact that it says angels gave it. Here's a little extra biblical. Josephus writes this in his Antiquities, book 15. He's quoting King Herod, who says, we have learned from God the most excellent of our doctrines and the most holy part of our law by angels. Extra biblical being, this isn't in the biblical record, but a Jewish historian writing from a Roman perspective quotes King Herod, a man who knew Torah, knew the oral teachings of the law, and said it was given by angels. Okay, do with that what you will. Again, I'll reiterate what I do with it is I see Paul as a Jewish man proclaiming a Jewish idea that was popular both in their scriptures and out of their scriptures, that the law of Moses was handed to them through angelic hands, but the new covenant is a man, and it is Christ Jesus. So that he is giving an entirely different delivery system. Now, if you take that to its nth degree, and I've heard this argument, you can ignore the whole law because it was given by angels, it wasn't given by God. Okay, there's where our argument starts to run into some struggles because the New Testament doesn't always agree with that statement, all right? We don't want the Bible fighting the Bible. So let's let that sleeping dog lie and let's move on and let's talk about transgression. One of the great arguments given in support of Paul's first answer, I'll remind you of the question when Paul says, what purpose does the law serve? It was added because of transgressions. One of the great supports for that would be that because people sinned against God, God gave them the law. If you line up Sinai with the actions going on at the bottom of Mount Sinai, is it the chicken or the egg? At the top of the mountain, God's giving Moses the 10 Commandments. At the bottom of the mountain, Israel's fashioning a golden calf. They've never heard, thou shalt not fashion a golden calf, but they're fashioning a golden calf. Is God writing, thou shalt not have any gods before me, because they're at the bottom of the mountain building a golden calf? Or are they building a golden calf because thou shalt not build golden calves has just come into existence, and wherever there's law, it inflames our sin? Well, that seems, who knows, right? Like, this is happening here in this. I mean, this is really the way Exodus tells this. God's up here giving Moses the law, and down here they're breaking the first 2 commandments. They haven't even heard them, and they're breaking them. And so, is God giving them the law because sin's already in their heart? And he needs to deal with the rebellion that's going on? Okay, I think that's making it a little too muddy. And I'm okay with let's throw dirt in the water. You know, let's ask questions. Yes. But if we lose the plot, maybe we need to start over. Okay, so let's let Paul, the guy who wrote it, do his best to try to tell us what he meant. What's cool about Romans? There's a lot cool about Romans, but what's really cool about Romans is it's, as far as I can see, it's like a written transcript of 2 dudes eating lunch together. One guy never talks, Tertius. He just writes. The other guy talks all the time. That's Paul. And that's why the book reads really weird. If you're honest, Romans starts out with one idea, Israel and Gentiles, and what are we going to do with these two? And then it gets conflated into righteousness and Israel. Don't get all cocky, because it's not really about what you do. And then, oh, let me tell you why I know it's not about what you do. And then it's chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, and chapter 8 about righteousness by faith and all the beautiful things that we talk about, justification and what God's doing through the blood. And then you get to the end of 8, it's like he realizes, oh, I was on a tangent, wasn't I, Tertius? I'm sorry. And he goes back for 3 chapters to Israel, chapter 9, chapter 10, chapter 11. It's like they're not even in the same book. He gets to the end of chapter 11. We're gonna hit that climactic moment in a minute. He makes the greatest point he makes in the entire book, and then he talks Christian living for a while, because preachers can't not talk Christian living. And so he has Christian living for a few chapters, and then he says, oh, by the way, let's spend an entire chapter saying hi to people. And so you then get to the end of it, and he goes, tell so-and-so hi, and so-and-so hi, and so-and-so hi, and so-and-so hi. And it's verse after verse after verse. Okay, it's a dude talking, and so the argument kind of runs in circles. But what's really cool about it is that you can watch him work things out. He'll say something, and then he'll say something else, and he'll work over here for a little bit. And then he'll say it again a little better. And then he'll go over here and work and work and work. And then he'll come back over here and say it just a little bit better. And it's fun. Sometimes you got to read it in big chunks too. You got to read a whole chapter at a time or 2 chapters at a time to watch him make his move. He doesn't nail it all at once. Okay, why does that matter? Probably doesn't, except for this crucial point. Quit trying to figure all this out. Let it happen. Okay, just work on it. Like, you don't have to have the answer. Have an answer, but don't be a diehard. And let it follow you through life. And I promise you what will happen is the Holy Spirit will elevate it a little bit. And then you go live your life and mess it up a little bit and knock it down. And then the Holy Spirit will build it up a little bit. And it's not about getting it all right. It's about allowing the journey of faith to inform your intellect that goes from knowledge to wisdom. And all this knowledge, which is all we're really arguing about, starts to turn into wisdom. And here's what I've found. When he starts to elevate the answer, down here is more and more my theology. Up here is more and more Jesus. And that's happened to me more times than I can count. As the answers get thicker, they get fuller of a revelation of Jesus. So as I go live my life and have a better revelation of Jesus, how would Jesus have done that? I go, my answer needs to change. And so the answers get elevated when Christ becomes the foundation versus me figuring stuff out. Okay, watch Paul a little bit circular with his argument. I even put them all up there. They're even in chronological progression. Romans 4:15, followed by Romans 5:13, followed by Romans 5:20. Because the law brings about wrath. I know I'm in the middle of a sentence there. We can only do so much. Because the law brings about wrath, for where there is no law, there is no transgression. So if there's no law, then no one's committing a transgression. So why was the law added? Because of transgressions. I mean, you can't even have a transgression if you don't have a law, right? That's Paul's argument. 5:13. Until the law. By the way, this one's even parenthetical. This is Paul arguing inside of Paul. He's at parentheses. It's like, let me throw something else in at you that I wasn't thinking about 10 seconds ago. Until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. Okay, put those two together. If there's no law, there's not even a transgression. Well, actually, up until there was law, people were sinning. But you can't really count it against them if there's no law. Okay, it's getting better. It's getting to where Paul goes, okay, yeah, it's no transgression if there's no law. However, we got a problem. People are messing up like crazy, and they're hurting each other, and they're killing one another, and they're lying to each other. So there obviously something's wrong with the human family. But the issue then is that God can't actually count against you what's not illegal. If they haven't made it illegal, they can't charge you with it. Okay? We're getting somewhere. 5:20. Moreover, the law entered actually so that your offense might get worse, abound. But, where sin abounds, well, then grace abounds much more. Can't even call it a transgression if there's no law. Okay, well, can't actually count things against them until there's a law, even though they were actually doing wrong in the first place. But then once you get law, that just makes people do worse than they were ever doing before they had law to be charged with in the first place. Oh, what are we going to do with that? Well, thank God for grace, because where sin abounds, grace does superabound. All right. So Paul's answer is getting better. It's being elevated. It ends up at grace, even though he's a bit exasperated. So what? The law is added because of transgressions. Let me tell you what I think Paul's doing. I think Paul realizes that we got a problem. But his theology doesn't allow for anybody to be charged unless something's illegal. And so you can't charge people with sin if you didn't tell them not to do it. The problem with that theology is that people have been doing some crazy stuff way before Sinai. We can't call it the same kind of sin we can call it after we get the law, but we still got to call it something. And so Paul goes, well, you were always messing up. God just couldn't charge you for it. The law allowed him to charge you for it, but it came with a dark side, because when you put law on people, you don't actually fix them, you just make them worse. And so at the end of the day, Paul's answer is grace. So what do we do with, what was the purpose of the law? It was added because of transgressions. Why does God add the law at Sinai when he adds the law at Sinai? And I think that's how we can get to the bottom of it. Because Israel is about to be a hemmed-in people, surrounded by her enemies, but she's finally a nation. Before, she was in subjected slavery. There's a really good chance that the children of Israel that come out of Egypt, I'm going to throw something at you, some of you have never thought of before. Hang on with me. The children of Israel that come out of the land of Egypt, many of them do not know the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They don't have the written text. They haven't heard the stories told in years. They know nothing of God. Some of them heard about it for the first time when Moses came back in and told them that I met God on the backside of the desert. He said, let my people go. I mean, they knew they had a God, but they have never had Passover before. They don't have any instructions on killing lambs and eating its flesh and leaving it till morning. None of that. That's all brand new, man. We always kind of think they're all geniuses at this. They got this real thick religious textbook on what to do, and now God drops the law on them. But the truth is they haven't had anything. They have been nothing but a subjected people, and they come out into the desert alive for the first time with no instruction. They don't know what to do, and they're hemmed in all around by their enemies. They are foreigners. They're on the run from the place they left with nowhere to go. And everywhere they go has already been there. They've already built armies. They already have fortresses. They already have walls. Israel has nothing. So God gives them the one thing that will identify them as a people, the code of the law. And Paul says it's because of transgressions. My argument is, I believe that what Paul is saying, because we keep transgressing God and we keep transgressing each other, God gave the law to teach us how not to do that. Because before the law, there's no real definition of what it looked like to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your might, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, let's cheat and move ahead. New Testament. Someone asked Jesus, what's the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus goes, love the Lord your God with all your heart, strength, soul, and mind. Oh, there's a bonus. Love your neighbor as yourself. He throws that in. That's so popular that by the time Paul writes the book of Romans, which that's the shame of, by the way, that had been around for a long, long time. Israel's been praying that prayer, and they still pray that prayer. But by the time Paul comes along in Romans, he goes to fulfill the whole law. It's to love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. These are the twin pillars of what the law is trying to do. All right? So I want to do something I've never done with you. I'm not a law preacher or grace preacher. I've never shown you the Ten Commandments. Not that it's private, like you couldn't have found the Ten Commandments on your own. But I want to do it for a whole different reason, okay? Ten Commandments. I'm not putting these up here because I'm trying to give you 10 ways to live right. Because Paul just told you it actually doesn't do it. Like people don't live better because they get the law, which we all know that. I'm not sure why we think slapping these up in public school hallways are going to cause kids to live righteously when we could probably come up with a few other verses that would at least give them grace, but I digress. 5 on one side, 5 on the other. What are the twin pillars of the law? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. So easy presentation, okay? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind is on the left side. Don't have other gods. Don't make idols. Don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day. That's the day of rest that God gave you. And then honor your father and mother, which is a fascinating transition into the right side, which is loving your neighbor as yourself. Because when you love your neighbor as yourself, you don't kill them, you don't commit adultery, you don't steal from them, you don't lie about them, and you don't want their stuff. Okay, so everything on the right is out, and everything on the left is up. The transition, I mean, honor your father and your mother, is a fascinating transition because it technically falls on the front 5. And it's God honoring family and honoring the commitment that we have with family. And it almost serves as the crossbeam between honoring God with the left side of the commandments and honoring God with the right side of the commandments. And that the centerpiece is family. It's familial. And so as we honor the unit of family, we honor the giver. Okay, so there's more we could say there, but that's how that seems to fall out as Israel sees it as well, because it's right in the center. It's not on the left, it's not on the right, it's right there in the middle, and everything sort of flows out of that. I tell you this because if the law was added, and this is the law, it was added because of the transgressions. What are the transgressions? Not knowing what to do with God and not knowing what to do with your neighbor. And not understanding those two things cause problems for the people of God. And so the law is added. I'll sum it down into this one thing. How I would answer this portion of the lesson is God gave the law so that we would stop hurting each other. So that at least we might not kill them, commit adultery on them, steal from them, lie to them, covet from them. Is there a lot more to the law than that? Yeah. But I mean, if we're going to be a people who have instruction on how to live together, it's a pretty good place to start. So the law is added because of how I transgressed you. The law gives me an instruction on how to treat you. Now, what we'll get into next week is you can live by that only, and you become rigid. Or you can live by the Holy Spirit, who will never breach that and who will honor it without rigidity. Okay, and so the Holy Spirit is in the business of teaching us to love the Father, but also in the business of teaching us to love our neighbor. And then how we live that out isn't legalisms, but the unforced rhythms of grace. Okay, a little bit ahead of ourselves, but that's heading in towards life in the Spirit. Let's jump back into 21. Galatians 3:21. Is the law then against the promises of God? Now, why would Paul ask this question? Because God made a promise to Abraham that he's going to give into everything by faith, and then he gave the law. And the law doesn't need faith. So Paul goes, well, is God trying to fight against himself? I mean, he gave Abraham everything by promise. Just believe me and I'll give it to you. Remember, we did this last week. He gave everything to Abraham by promise. Just believe me and I'll give it to you. So then why bother with this? Okay, because Paul knows that the propensity is to believe that if we receive the law by Moses, it supersedes whatever he had already given us by Abraham. Paul knows that's the thought process because that's the thought process that he had in his Saul era, was that God gave us this so that this would supersede everything. But now he sees it differently. Certainly not. If there had been a law given which would have given life, then truly righteousness would have been by the law. It's kind of like saying, comb through the law. Don't just stop at the 10 Commandments. Take all of them, and do any of them actually give you life? No. Many of them just keep you from taking other people's lives. But they don't give you anything other than a sense of self-righteousness. And self-righteousness is cheap righteousness because it's compared only to other people. It's not in any way compared to God. And so it's always easy to find someone you're outliving. That's what makes self-righteousness so fun. It's also what makes interpersonal judgment fun. You don't ever pick people that you can't outlive to judge. You just pick people you've been hearing stories about. Judge them and them. I heard what they did. I saw what they said. I see that post. Easy to do and a little fun. to scratch that self-righteous itch. But when you stack it up against God, you can fall short every time. And so Paul goes, none of the law actually gave you life. It just kept you off other people's lives. If any one of them could have given you life, then the law can possibly give life. Let's go back to something we read a second ago. The law, and we kind of skipped it because it was right in the middle of a sentence. The law worked wrath. And what I think Paul is saying to us is all that it will ever do is work out the worst parts of us. Okay, it's all the law will ever do. And if you don't believe me, get around people who are hyper performance oriented and religious. Ugh. And you want to talk about working the worst bone in your body, that'll do it. That'll work the worst wrath, the worst judgment, the worst frustrations. The law works wrath because the law played into our perpetual sense of death. Death to our originality, death to our joy, death to our hope. It's why people come to Jesus and they're excited to meet Him. Wow, this Jesus, my whole life is Jesus. And then baggage. Works, performance, religion, do's and don'ts. And now I can't see Him very clearly anymore. And there goes the joy of my salvation. And there goes the peace that passes all understanding. And I don't want to be here this week. And I hate these people. And I wish I'd never gotten saved. You go, man, that didn't take long. Well, it can take a little longer than that, but you get my point. I'm not talking about something I've read in a book. I'm talking about things I've lived my entire lives. I've been that guy. I've counseled that girl. I've pastored those people. I've seen it more times than I want to admit. Excited to know Jesus. Bogged down with religion. Crushed underneath performance. Destroyed by guilt, shame, and condemnation. Skip, lay out. Not sure I want to do this anymore. Run from God. And then the ones still in there just go, well, they didn't even really get saved. We don't even adjust. We don't even elevate our thinking towards Christ. We just double down on they weren't working hard enough or they didn't try enough. And we wonder why people grow increasingly frustrated. Paul says he couldn't have heard Jesus say this. I mean, unless he heard Jesus say it to him, because he doesn't have John 10 when he writes this. But he says what Jesus says, essentially. Behold, I'm the door. If you're going to get in, you're going to have to come in through me. Everyone who came before me was a thief and a robber. And the thief comes not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. But I have come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundant. Because whatever everybody else is selling you will steal, kill, and destroy. And that's what I said. I just put some stuff in there that was on my mind that I've seen happen. Death to spontaneity, death to happiness, death to peace, whatever, and destroyed because you get more religion and more works and more until it chokes the lifeblood out of you. And Jesus said, everybody that came before me was a thief. Everybody's been robbing you, but I'm the way home. He goes, come in through me. I'm the door. Come in that you might have life and they might have more abundant. Why? Because you don't find life in the doing of the law. In fact, Paul calls the law the ministry of death. Here's some stuff you can read later. He calls it the ministry of death in 2 Corinthians 3:7. And in Romans 7:10, he said that which we thought would bring life actually brought death. It's Paul admitting that when we looked at the law as people, we thought, man, this is it. This is what God wants for us. And then we tried to live by it. And the more we tried to live by it, the heavier it got, the harder it got. It pulled us down, and that which we thought would bring us life only brought us death. Now, this doesn't make Paul popular, and I can tell you it won't make you popular today. It's not the secret to building a big ministry, is come out of the gate telling people that they're not under performance standards, they're merely under the grace of Jesus Christ, you'll get exhausted people. Sometimes I feel a little bit like David at the cave of Adullam. David is on the run and he's sort of fleeing for his life. And when he gets to the cave of Adullam, everybody in the countryside hears that he's there. And the Bible says the worst of the people came out to join him. And sometimes I think that's who gets drawn to grace. Now, I mean this in the highest possible way of saying it. It's the ones of us that went, I can't do this anymore. I forget it. I'm done with, and maybe in David's world, it was, I'm done with the organized army. I'm done with the structure of Saul. I'm finished with the way these guys do. I'm going to go follow this dude in a cave. I mean, seems like he's got something going on. I mean, at least he knows how to bring down Goliath. And I'll go follow that. And a lot of what Paul is presenting really is that, where you got to just get tired of it and exhausted on those other things and recognize that they'll never bring life, that all they bring is death. The law works wrath. Let me give you a couple real quick. Romans 3, 21, 22. But now the righteousness of God apart from the law is revealed. It's witnessed by the law. It's witnessed by the prophets. It's not brought by the law, and it's not brought by the prophets because it cannot be. Righteousness of God could only be witnessed to by the law and the prophets. Even the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ to all and on all who believe, for there is no difference. I actually think the story of the Transfiguration is the New Testament living this out in full color. Elijah and Moses meet Jesus on the mountain. Moses is the law, Elijah is the prophets. That's how Israel saw those two characters. And then Peter gets excited because that's what a Jewish man in his day would have done. And go, let's build 3 houses, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah, because as far as they were concerned, grace and the law were the same thing. And God puts them all, puts a bright light, knocks them down on the ground and says, this is my son, hear him. And when Peter opens his eyes, Moses and Elijah have disappeared because there's no one left standing on the field. To this day, there's no one left standing on the field. Moses and Elijah are not equal to Jesus. Anything written in the law and the prophets are not equal to Jesus. They're going to leave you wanting. You're going to read the law and the prophets and be wanting. And almost every Christian I've ever talked to will tell you that, and they try to figure out why. Boy, that Old Testament's tough. Let's say stuff like this. That Old Testament's rough, man. I just have a hard time reading that Old Testament. I just can't understand what they're... And they think it's a literature issue. It's not a literature issue. There's some of the most beautiful literature ever written in the Old Testament. It's a law and a prophets issue. You came in through Jesus. Everything else is pale. Like everything else has baggage. You came in through the door. Everything else will thieve you and rob you. And so what do we do with the Old Testament? We go look for Jesus. You want to brighten that baby up? Go look for Jesus. Find him in the stories. And where you don't find him, move on. Quit getting bogged down in stuff you can't find Christ in so that you can answer someone's question. He is the answer to that question. So go look for Christ in the midst of that. That's the righteousness passage. Let me deal with one more tonight. Galatians 3:22. I told you we were going to end at the great climactic moment for Paul in Romans. I love this idea. I need weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on this, but we're going to take 4 minutes. But the scripture has confined all of us under sin, that the promise by faith in Jesus Christ might be given to those who believe. Here's another answer for why the law was given. This has all been in the same passage. What's the purpose of the law? To trap everybody under sin. Because if you could put the law out there, then everybody that breaks it is guilty. Okay, who would break the law if we put law out there? Everyone. Okay, so now everybody's guilty. Ah, yes, everyone's guilty. Now let me go back. Let me just take you back to my Romans story. Here comes Paul. He's sitting down eating his lunch, and he's talking about Israel, and he's talking about Gentiles and judgment and interpersonal. He gets off on a tangent about sin for a bit, and then he recognizes a little cockiness in his teaching of righteousness. He goes, "Oh, don't be so sure, because those of you who point the finger, you're the one that's guilty." And then that takes him into righteousness, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, all this beautiful no condemnation talk, life in the Spirit talk. And then he gets back on Israel, chapter 9, chapter 10, chapter 11. Those which weren't grafted in are now grafted in. All of Israel shall be saved. And he's preached himself up to a sweat. And he doesn't, I don't know if he really knows what to do with it, because that's what we do preaching sometimes. We get all pumped and excited and make 15 connections, and we're weaving this baby to the invitation, and you go, where do you land? What's the perfect thing? And I'm going to show you what I think is Paul's second best verse he ever writes. The best one's coming up in Galatians. I've been warning you for weeks. But this is the second best verse he ever writes. He never gets any better about his salvific verse than this. Romans 11:32. God committed everybody to disobedience so that he could have mercy on everybody. That's really good. Let me show you why that's really good. God put everybody underneath something so that every single person has to come to God as the publican. We all want to come as the Pharisee. Remember that parable? Lord, I don't cheat. I'm not committing adultery. I've been paying my tithes. I don't live like that dog. And then there's that dog who comes walking in, beats his breast, and goes, have mercy on me, a sinner. And Jesus goes, who goes home justified? Both of them could have. And it had nothing to do with how they were living. If the Pharisee had just come to God and went, have mercy on me, he gets the same justification as the publican who goes, have mercy on me. But we're obsessed with the living right. So obsessed with the living right that we miss the point. The point of that parable is not be humble. That's kind of how we've preached that. You know, it's great that you pay your tithes and don't cheat and live for God and go to church. God just wants you to have some humility. Be more like that publican. Really? Be more like that publican? Rip everybody off, live like a dog, and then come to church and ask God for mercy and get it. That's what you're asking for? Hey, I would actually rather us preach that. Like, do whatever you want, come and ask God for grace. That would be way better than do the best you can this week. Just be humble about all of your goodness. Because at the end of the day, both of them were committed underneath disobedience. He's confined everybody under the same guilt. But don't miss the power of that last phrase, so that he can have mercy on everybody. Now, I'm glad I don't get to tell God who he gets to have mercy on. That makes it sound like he gets to have mercy on who? Everybody. I leave it up to him to what that looks like. Here's our verses for next week. Galatians 3, 23, 24, 25. We won't preach them tonight. We're going to set them up before faith came. Here's one last little shot we have that we got to work on. Before faith came, we were under guard by the law, kept for faith which would afterward be revealed. Therefore, the law was a tutor to bring us to Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But after faith has come, we are no longer under a tutor. So faith supersedes whatever the law was up to. So why in the world do you keep inviting the tutor to the table? And that's Paul's question to the churches at Galatia. And that's what we're going to work on next week as we talk about the Spirit versus the guide. Let's bow our heads. I know I went long tonight, exceptionally long tonight. There was a lot to do. I pray that you've been impacted and blessed and are patient with me. Father, thank you for this word tonight. Thank you for this. This is overwhelming. It's too much. Thank you for what we could grasp and what I hope we've helped somebody else to grasp. And where we've interfered and muddied the waters too much, Father, I pray that your Spirit will do the work and clear that up. Father, I pray that we have somehow tapped into, somehow found the spirit of this passage, that it is not about what we can do, but about what you have done. I'm not asking you to give us the answer to the question, what then purpose does the law serve? But Father, may we start to dwell on some of the things that your text tells us so that we can start to see these realities play out in our life. In Jesus' name, amen.